Hello, everyone, and welcome to Palmetto Sports Daily. Rick Henry here in Columbia, Tegan Brown in Myrtle Beach, Kevin Bilodeau in Charleston, and Carmine Jamay in Greenville. Holding it down, got a full house, and we're going to kick things off talking about some college football. The South Carolina Gamecocks kicking off their spring practice today, and coming out for 4-8 season is everyone is glad to get back on the field. Carolina's had an up and down off season. They signed some talented guys out of the portal, but then they've lost two offensive linemen to injuries, one for what will probably be an entire season and the other out for the spring and summer workouts, but should be back for to play in September. There's a look at Lenore Sellers. He came back along with Nick Harbert, Dylan Stewart. You got your top stars back, but fans won't be able to see them play in a spring game because there's not going to be a spring game because of constructions, renovations at Williams-Brice Stadium. And Shane Beamer was asked today, does that affect the way they go about preparing for the fall without having a spring game? And this is his response.
I think it'll be very much status quo, what we've done. We've always installed everything that we wanted to install during spring practice, whether we had a spring game or not. So it won't change, spring game or no spring game. What we're doing, we're trying to do a great job of teaching in the springtime what we want to be about as we get into Kent State and Towson and the opening opponents. That'll be more for the summer. Right now for us, it's more let's install this offense, this defense, this special teams. Let's lay this foundation. Let's figure out what we're really, really good at, maybe where we're not quite where we need to be and what we need to do this summer. That'll be the focus here this upcoming spring.
Yeah, and when you have a spring game anyway, like your big stars, like your Nick Harbers, your Lenore Sellers, they're not going to play that much in the spring game. It's an opportunity for some of the younger guys to get out there and show the folks and the coaches what they can do. Shane has a number of new coaches to work with, so the spring is important to them. And they get all their work done basically on the practice field. So no big deal that they're not having a spring game.
Yeah, the only big deal is for us here in the upstate to see Cutter Hollywood Woods, the backup quarterback, light things up in the spring game like he did as a true freshman last season, coming in on his first play and throwing a 50-yard pass and then running in a short touchdown in an offense that Lenore Sellers were struggling with in the first half. Kevin, I know that was just the spring game. Of course, Lenore has proven his talent on the field in real games. But it's too bad and I know there's a lot of logistics, but it's too bad they couldn't find another place. South Carolina State or maybe another school would lend their facilities to the Gamecocks, have the fans come in, feel that game-like pressure. But I know there's a lot of moving pieces there. Just kind of disappointing we won't get to see as close to a game atmosphere as you can before the fall starts.
Yeah, but a spring game really, it's just a cash grab for the school. There's really nothing more than it's just a glorified practice in front of 60, 70,000 people. So missing out on that is not a big deal for anyone, I really think, even for the fans. I've been to the spring game a couple of times, taking my kids. Even they get a little bored after they bring those starters out. So I don't think that's a big deal. Plus, I think when you consider that football coaches are as paranoid as just about any other profession there is. And when you start getting into this thing where guys are jumping into the transfer portal after, or they're just leaving the team after because they want to see what else is out there, teams start calling them because, hey, you did pretty good in that spring game. Why don't you come over here and get more playing time? That's going to lead to coaches just putting the kibosh on this thing as quick as they can and making sure that there's one less thing they have to worry about, Tegan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, spring games throughout the past few years, we've seen them diminish. Some schools choosing to do instead like a spring festival where you're interacting with the players. Coastal Carolina, I know they did that last year. It's just a chance for fans to kind of get a look. But at the end of the day, I don't think the Gamecocks not having a spring game is going to affect them in any way in terms of how they're going to play this season. The biggest thing that'll affect them that we're looking at so far, Rick, is just those guys that they're losing to injury. Of course, Josiah Thompson, the Dillon High School alum, one of them. So tough time for the Gamecocks. Fans get a Darius Rucker concert, though, so that's at least pretty cool, Rick.
Yeah, and Shane has said that He wants the spring game to continue once they're able to. He likes the spring game, so we'll see if that does indeed happen. But Kev, you're right. Those spring games can get boring real quickly because they don't want to show too much, so they keep it close to the vest.
Yeah, and hey, a team that we thought could have used a lot more preparation, speaking of the preseason last year, was the Carolina Panthers. Remember, we were ranting and raving on this very show, Palmetto Sports Daily, talking about how the Panthers needed to play their starters more. Their offense was terrible in the preseason. And, I mean, their offense was very up and down during the regular season. I don't know how much the preseason had to do with that. But now, a big-time honor, the Hall of Fame game for the Carolina Panthers against the Arizona Cardinals in Canton, Ohio, to kick off the preseason. And they'll be honoring one of their very own, of course, the newest Hall of Fame member from the Carolina Panthers, the second youngest Hall of Famer of all time, the linebacker Luke Kuechly, who helped the Cardiac Cats get to that Super Bowl appearance with Cam Newton and the fellas there, and Thomas Davis, that great team that had Christian McCaffrey, Kelvin Benjamin, all those great players. So it'll be very cool and very timely for Luke Kuechly to go into the Hall of Fame and the Panthers to get the Hall of Fame game. And Tegan, this is really a great vote of confidence for the Panthers because it's a really nice thing just to be on national TV, have that first preseason game, some excitement. And again, not really a performance-based thing. It would be nice to win. But when you see the Panthers trending upwards from 2-15 record the year before Dave Canales got there, 5-12 in his first year, and 8-9 in the most recent year, where of course they made their first playoff appearance and won the division for the first time, albeit not a great division. Both of those in about a decade for the first time. Really nice to see the Panthers trending upward and to be on a national stage. I know it's just the preseason, but the Hall of Fame game, Tegan, to be included in that is a pretty big deal and a sign of trending in the right direction.
Yeah, it definitely is, Carmine. And I mean, you look at last season, I think all of us can kind of agree that in the beginning when we were talking about the Panthers, we didn't have a lot of confidence in them. And yes, that confidence went up throughout the season. We saw an 8-9 team go to the playoffs, kind of, again, another unexpected thing that we hadn't really thought would happen at the beginning of the season. But yeah, for them to play in this Hall of Fame game in the preseason is great to see. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that kind of franchise quarterback kind of look for Bryce Young this year. I've got a better feeling about them going into this next season than I did last season, so definitely exciting to see, Kevin. But my expectations are still not super high for this team, but they're slightly better than last year.
Slightly. I'd say that's a good way to put it. Slightly better. And, this is really more about putting together a good week for the fans who already are going to go to Canton and see guys enshrined. Like you said, for Carolina, it's Luke Kuechly. For Arizona, it's Larry Fitzgerald. So it's more about giving those fans a reason to stay in Canton for a couple days longer and maybe check out the Hall of Fame game and see some football action. But, we were talking about boring games before with spring games. This is even beyond an exhibition game for the NFL. This is literally Bryce Young might play 2 plays for Carolina, and then they bring him out, and then they trot out Andy Dalton or whoever the backup quarterback's going to be for the next couple of plays after that, and then you go to the 3 rookies they draft and a guy they signed as an undrafted free agent. So it's not going to be a fun game to watch. I still think probably 8 or 9 million people are going to watch it because it's the first football game we'll have on in several months, but I'm not holding my expectations too high on this one, Rick.
Yeah, people will be clamoring for some football, and it is an honor to get a nationally televised game, be it preseason or regular season, because the past few seasons we haven't seen a lot of the Panthers in prime time, Monday night football, Sunday night football, maybe a random Thursday night game here, and so yeah, it's good for them, and it'll be a good treat for the fans. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the opening segment of Palmetto Sports Daily. We're calling our first time out, and we're going to be right back talking some basketball.
Welcome back in to Palmetto Sports Daily, and we're talking, surprisingly, because of how the beginning of the season went, about another tough time for the Clemson Tigers. They lost 67-63 at the 17th-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels in a game they were in for the whole time, and they had the lead with only 5 minutes left. Here you see our Palmetto sports reporter Ella Grogan's great video of the team taking the court. Of course, we can't show you actual game action because of the restrictions, but it was a great game, especially on the defensive end, and especially for the cat guy, R.J. Godfrey. He scored a career-high 22 points for Clemson on 10 for 13 shooting, even made just his second career three-pointer in the last 2 years, which he banked in. But the bank was open on Tuesday night in Chapel Hill, and there you see the big man right there. Unfortunately, though, guys, he only scored 1 point in the final 8.5 minutes of this game, and he had 21 points leading up to that. So they couldn't get the ball inside to him or didn't try hard enough to do it. And North Carolina's defense is very good, I will say that. But Clemson has now lost 5 out of its last 6 games. And if you think about it in a time manner, they've lost now more games in the last 3 weeks than they lost in the first 3 months of this season. And here's head coach Brad Brownell speaking about finishing up strong, hosting Georgia Tech on Senior Day for their final game on Saturday after this very tough stretch.
We just got to get our swagger back. I think we're getting there. You know, we had a tough couple of weeks, which in these long seasons happens. I think most teams go through a week or two that, you know, maybe don't go your way. Sometimes you even play okay but lose. And you know, these were 2 big games, Louisville and at home, and then at North Carolina. We competed exceptionally hard in both games. Got one of the 2. Now we need to, you know, take a day off and regroup, and then come back and try to win our Senior Day and build momentum for the tournament.
And scoring continues to be a problem for the Tigers, which Brad Brownell has said countless times this season. Now, they're second best in the ACC as far as defense, holding opponents to just 65 points per game. And you saw they basically did that, only allowing UNC to score 67. But the problem is they themselves have trouble getting into the 70-point range even for scoring. In that win over Louisville that Coach Brownell mentioned, their second-ranked win of the year last weekend, they scored 80 points. That was the most points they've scored in 3 months. So really difficulty scoring for Clemson. Defense is really good, but unfortunately just not enough scoring to overcome UNC at the very end, and especially their player Luka, he looked like Luka in the pros, Tegan. He had 20 points, almost all of them in the second half, which was a career high for him as far as scoring in a game. Career high 6 3-pointers, and Clemson just, in a lot of these games, can't keep up offensively, even though their defense is usually very good.
Yeah, I think it's been a disappointing 6-game stretch for Clemson. I think that having Georgia Tech as their last game is going to kind of be their highlight of the end of the season. Georgia Tech, of course, at the bottom of the ACC. So, Carmine, I'm just kind of curious what you think this game is going to look like, because it should be a win on paper for Clemson, right? Mm-hmm.
I think so, yeah, and it was a win when they played at Georgia Tech earlier this year, so it should be an easy win, but at the rate where this offense is going, you don't really know all the time, although they did put up a good fight in Chapel Hill, didn't seem rattled by the atmosphere in a place where North Carolina just set a program record going 18-0 at home this season. So let's not discount how good of an opponent Chapel Hill is. But hopefully it's a win, Tegan, on Senior Day, and Clemson can carry that into the ACC tournament, where it looks like they will no longer get the double bye anymore. But a single bye is not bad, and carry that momentum into the ACC tournament. And Rick, speaking of Senior Day, the Gamecocks just celebrated, unfortunately, during the midst of a difficult season for them.
Yeah, Carmine, a single bye is not bad. It's a lot better than bye, which is happening with the Gamecocks. They lost their senior night and lost to Tennessee 78-59. Carolina is 12-18 overall, 3-14 in the league. 12-18. If the Gamecocks win their final regular season game and then sweep through the SEC tournament, winning 5 games to win the SEC championship, they would then have a 500 record. So that's where they are. And let's take a look at some senior night video. Meechie Johnson, this is a pretty good story, because Meechie transferred from Ohio State to South Carolina. Then he transferred back to Ohio State. He had some family issues, death in the family, and he's been very open about his mental health problems. and he wanted to come back to South Carolina because he felt it was, more like family. He has a great relationship with head coach Lamont Paris. He scored 20 points on his senior night, his last game at Colonial Life Arena. Very emotional. And here's Michi and Lamont Paris talking about Michi's farewell and what Carolina means to him.
Definitely shedded a few tears because I felt like this place just made me so much of a better person and better basketball player. So to leave that court, know I won't be playing again, is definitely something that was a little heartbreaking for sure.
It's a tremendous story of perseverance and of being true to yourself, because he wanted to be back here. For him to be able to quiet that noise in a way that he could really dive into his team and his coaches and just his whole experience in this last year being back here in Columbia said a lot about who he was as a person.
It's not hard to cheer for Michi Johnson just in the game of life. He actually wrote a note to Lamont Paris, put it in an envelope, gave it to him before the game, and Lamont said he couldn't open it before the game because he knew he would probably get pretty emotional. So good to see Michi come back to South Carolina. He gave it his all. They didn't have the season he wanted to, but you have to feel pretty good about how he's handling everything so far.
Yeah, Michi's been a great ambassador for this school and for this team, and I wish he'd had more time as a Gamecock, because they really could have set some records with that school. But I think the real thing we got to talk about from this game, Rick, not just the Gamecocks' performance, which they, again, got pretty much tossed around last night on the court, but the fact that there was, 30 people in the stands last night for the final home game of the season for South Carolina on senior night. Just nobody there, and it gets to the bigger point of what the Gamecocks do going forward with Lamont Paris. Now, obviously, there's a big buyout on his contract if they want to buy out the last couple of years and move in a different direction. If they do that, that's going to take money away from they can put towards players and NIL money. So there's that decision. But you take a look at just the fact that how empty the stands were last year. I don't know if they could afford the apathy that they have towards this team right now going forward for another year, Rick.
Yeah, you had to really feel for the players last night, but there's so many things working against them, like their record. And, it's tough to keep asking the fans to show up knowing the team is going to lose. It was a 6 o'clock start time, and but you're right. Lamont's buyout is around $12 million. There's been talk about giving him $15 million for NIL, but when you see the empty seats, that's a sign to me that the coach's time at that institution is going to be very short. But Jeremiah Donati, the athletics director, we haven't heard anything from him. So the SEC tournament is next week. Carolina at the most, you can expect maybe they can win 2 games, or they'll probably be one and done. And then he's quickly got to make a decision. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this segment of Palmetto Sports Daily. We're going to call another timeout, and we'll see you very soon.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We move down to the high school level, where the South Carolina House of Representatives voted yesterday by a count of 112-0 to keep the South Carolina High School League as the governing body of high school sports in this state for public schools. But they did have a revamped structure going in. So there's going to be some changes for the South Carolina High School League going forward. All kinds of changes being made. We've talked about these a little bit. Among the highlights, one representing person from each classification is going to be on a 17-person member of the executive committee. That's up from 13 members. I think one of the big things is that now the league is going to be subject to state audits, which means the state is going to be in charge of the South Carolina High School League. There's other changes that are being made as well, but that's the one I kind of want to focus on because it feels, for lack of a better word, just icky that they're making this change a day after Jerome Singleton announces that he's going to retire by the latest of 2027 in July of that year. So for him to make that announcement on Monday, Rick, and then for them to come back and be like, okay, everything's fine now, we're going to drop everything else, it doesn't stick right with me.
No, it does seem like, basically they have forced Jerome Singleton out. There's been some rumblings about him for several years, especially when rulings go against schools. And so we'll see what happens, because obviously some people have gotten their wish. But I just have a bad feeling about where the South Carolina High School League is headed now, with politics getting involved so heavily.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about in the past, and I'm sure it's going to be more stuff we talk about coming up in the future as we learn more details about what this bill is going to mean for the South Carolina High School League. We're going to be right back to wrap up this edition of Palmetto Sports Daily right after this.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. As we wrap up today's episode, we've got to do so on a sad note for Coastal Carolina. The women in the Sun Belt Tournament today on this Wednesday taking on South Alabama, a team that they beat earlier this season by a pretty good margin, but the Chants falling today 80-70 against the Jaguars. Kristen Williams led the team with 16 points, but that is it for the Chants in this season. They end the year 14-8. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode, but we'll see you tomorrow.